Hi, John Morgan here with the Keep Growing podcast. In previous episodes, we've talked about some of the key concepts for growing plants. Now, it's time to get your hands dirty. Growing plants is a huge hobby with tons of options. Do you like edibles or ornamentals? Indoor plants or the great outdoors? Succulents, orchids, perennials, annuals, a huge vegetable garden, a formal rose garden. The list of possibilities goes on and on and on and on, and, well, you get the picture. So, where do you start? A good place to start is with one of the most important tools a gardener can use: a journal. Maybe it's my background as a teacher, but I'm a big advocate for keeping some sort of journal, both for your garden and for life in general. Personally, I like to use a system called bullet journaling. I've tried apps, but they all have one problem: they disappear when you close them. There's something about the process of writing something down that helps me remember stuff. Okay, so now it's time to do a simple exercise. You might not have a journal yet, but grab a scrap sheet of paper. Okay, I'll give you a couple seconds, or, well, just pause this. Now think about your goals as a gardener. Those questions I mentioned at the beginning are a good place to start. In fact, I recently faced these questions myself. In 2015, my wife and I bought a house on 1.5 acres. The landscape had no bushes, trees, or really landscaping of any sort. It was a totally blank slate. So, where did we begin? We started by listing the goals for our landscape. We want a landscape that's low maintenance, is a relaxing retreat, and also produces food. Now that we have those goals, we can start researching and planning. In college, I heard more than one teacher say, "Plan your work and work your plan," when they were talking about lesson plans. The same thing goes for gardening too. A garden journal serves not only as a guide for planning, but also a record of past projects, your successes, and also your failures. Plans for gardens can be as simple as a list of materials, or as intricate as a big sketch. Something I did with my own property was print off an aerial view from Google Earth. That way I could get a broad overview of the layout and actually sketch right on the printout. It's been 3 years, and we've been busy remodeling the interior of our house, so I haven't started on the landscape aside from some small projects. That's been a good thing though. It's let us see how we've used the property and adjust our designs. Originally, I had planned on a detached greenhouse in the far corner of the property near an existing vegetable garden. However, after the last few years, I think we've settled on building an attached greenhouse in the future, along with moving the bulk of the vegetable garden closer to the house and transitioning from the classic Victory-style garden with rows to raised beds. Sometimes taking your time can be a good thing, especially with bigger projects like a 1.5 acre landscape. However, once you start planning a project, how do you decide on a design? There's magazines, books, and perhaps one of our greatest resources today, the internet. Just the other night, I was looking for ideas for a pergola with raised beds around it. With a quick Google image search, I had tons of ideas. Google, Pinterest, Instagram, there's an endless supply of inspiration online. And that brings me to my guest for this episode. There's quite a few gardening apps out there, and most of them aren't that great. However, all that changed a few years ago. For this episode, I got in touch with Mason Day. Mason is the co-founder of the GrowIt app, a social network for people to connect with other plant enthusiasts around them. The goal of this app is to educate people while inspiring them to plant something new. The app is the go-to mobile source of information for people at all experience levels. Alright, so I'm here today with Mason Day from GrowIt. And Mason, if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about the app.
Well, first off, thanks for having me on the podcast, John. So I'm Mason Day. I'm the co-founder of GrowIt, and we are an app that is a social platform for people that like plants or that just are trying to get interested in plants. And maybe somebody sees something along a walk and they don't know what it is, or maybe someone really wants to show off their garden. All of those types of things, that's what we do. And we connect people in the world of plants. And so we've been around for about 4 years now, and there's about 700,000 people using the app across North America.
Wow, that's amazing. So, when it comes to the app itself, what are some of the different aspects of it? I know back whenever it originally launched, guys kind of talked about it kind of like it was like Tinder for plants. But I know it's grown a little bit beyond that.
Yeah, when we first started out, it really was like a Tinder for plants. We People could upload things that they liked or things that they didn't like, and then basically wherever you were located, you'd see what other people uploaded, but you all you could see was a picture of it, and then you would say that whether or not you liked it. So you had to rate the plants, and so it was really a plant rating app. And the idea was to help people find plants that were highly rated around them. Since then, since those days, the app has certainly evolved to now it's more of a feed of plants. So we still give people the ability to rate plants, but it's more, you're seeing what people are uploading, seeing what they're doing with these plants in your specific area and seeing like, are they putting them into, their front yards, their backyards? Is it something on a patio? Is it, an apartment full of houseplants? People can upload projects. So if they want to do a rain garden, they can detail step by step how they did it so that other people can then go back and follow that. But also in the last year and a half, maybe 2 years now, we've launched the question and answer feature. So it used to be that in order to interact with the app, you had to basically upload a photo or comment on a photo. But what we found out is people have a lot of questions that are plant and gardening related, but maybe aren't necessarily tied to a specific photo. So what we see a lot of times in the summer months, a ton of questions about vegetable gardening, but it's how do I stop corn borers or squash borers so that they get all these beetle larvae in their squash vines and they want to know how to get them out. And so people can ask questions directly to other folks in their area and say, hey, how did you solve this problem? And then get advice from there. And that's really turning into one of the biggest features on the app.
Yeah, I know that's something that I dive into from time to time, and I can just spend hours going through questions and answering them and looking at something and going, oh, that's a really interesting question. And when it comes to projects, you can create a project, but you can also search for plants and add those to your project. Is that?
That's absolutely correct. And that's
Yeah.
kind of projects can be used in a number of ways. So what I like to use a project for is kind of as almost like a shopping list, right? So I travel the country and talk to people about all kinds of things that we're up to and get to see a lot of amazing plants. Will they all work for me in Chicago? Probably not. Um, but what I can do is actually I have a wish list project that is actually private that no one else can see that I add all these plants to as I see them. And so I kind of the next year when things finally thaw out in Chicago, I can go to my local garden center and say, hey, do you have these things? And, hopefully they do. And I can kind of add to my little collection in my yard.
Another aspect of the app is the garden shops section. And could you talk a little bit about it?
So the garden shops feed on the app is actually a great way for users to uh, figure out, where they can go and find, because obviously we want people to find plant inspiration on the app and figure out like, oh, that's something that I need to be growing. But then the next question is, where can I get it? And what the Garden Shops feature is it connects community members to the local independent retailers in their area. So people that are selling high quality plants and have high quality knowledge. I know that you guys are on there, so that's obviously you guys have great plants and a lot of knowledge at Bob's Market, and that way that somebody can go on and say, "I'm looking for something pink for shade." And then, like, who has it? And then, it gives you the opportunity to upload pictures of things that are either in bloom or maybe that are just, getting ready for sale. And you can say, hey, like, this is a plant that we have. And you can even say, like, oh, like, we've only got a few of them left. And, like, people can be like, oh, like, I really have to go in and get that plant. So it's a way to connect those people that are selling high quality plants to the community members that are looking for them in a local sense too. It's all about being extremely local on based on where you're located at.
Yep. Yep. With the app, there's also a section called Grow Wards, and I was wondering if you could sort of talk about it and kind of how it works.
Yeah, absolutely. So Grow Wards is our sort of fun way to uh, reward community members on the app for doing different things. And so we actually have a kind of a level system for the more that you do, the higher your level is. And so you get rewards for adding photos or identifying plants or asking a question or answering a question. And then we also have some really cool ones with that. This year, for example, we partnered with the National Wildlife Federation. And so if you upload a picture, I think it was if you upload 5 pictures with the hashtag Garden for Wildlife, you received a special limited edition Grow Ward. And what a
Hmm.
Grow Ward is it's essentially like a digital badge. And so, you think like, oh, that's fun, but like, what is it really? But our community members go nuts over Grow Wards, and it's really a competition amongst them to see who has the highest level and who can do the most activity. And we have a group of people on the app that we call our plant masters, and so they are like the upper echelon. One lady identified 25,000 plants in the last year. So clearly she is all about the Grow Awards.
With the app, we've kind of gone through some of the major features of it. What are some of the trends that you guys have spotted? Because with 700,000 users, that's a lot of data that you can start to look at and spot trends.
Absolutely. And, when we started out with that, we looked at it as a way to figure out, what are people really interested in when it comes to plants? Because as an industry, we put a certain product set out in front of people and we hope that they like it. But, we should be doing a better job of figuring out before people get into a store, make sure that they have the products that they want. And really, we've seen some interesting things. One of the top trends is a functional use. People are asking, it's pretty, but what does it do? And when it comes to a plant that fills that sort of need, lavender. Lavender is a
Hmm.
huge trend on the app right now, just because it's pretty, it smells great. It attracts pollinators, and people can kind of use it in multiple ways. You can put it in a landscape, you can put it on a patio, and you can even bring it indoors. And sure, it's not going to last, as long as the pothos, but it's going to last just as long as the candle that you buy at your local store. To whether or not you want a candle for a month and a half or a lavender, I think the choice there makes a lot of sense to me. And so that's one big trend. And then obviously, John, houseplants. People can't get enough of them. And I think
Yep.
that we really, as a population, we were concerned that millennials weren't interested in plants. And I think we were a little wrong. We just didn't know what types of plants that they liked. And what we're learning now is that people can't get enough of even things that we consider old fashioned: snake plant, pothos, dracaena, all of those things people are really interested in. And one of the big plants that people are asking about, but they're not so easy to find and they can be a little pricey, is monstera. Everybody seems to be falling in love with that plant right now. And then also I'll mention, I have to mention that we see a ton of, when it comes to blooms, is tropical hibiscus, just because of the sheer color array that people get on one bloom, and it's an intense pop of color.
Yeah, I know. We carry and sell quite a bit of hibiscus in our local retail markets. Um, what is probably the most shared plant on GrowIt?
That's a funny one. So the most identified plant on the app, I have to say this. The experienced gardener, right? We think that people understand plants and know all sorts of plants, right? But when we look out at who's out there gardening, and who's has to plant things, that's everybody, and not everybody is trained in the ways of plants. And that's why we see the top three identified plants on the app are hosta, daylily, and peony. Right? These are garden classics, and people are just asking, "Hey, this thing popped up in my yard. Do I rip it out? Is this? I bought this new house and I have all these plants and I don't know what they are." And I think you and I could probably identify a hosta in our sleep.
Mm-hmm.
But for these people, it's something new, and they want to know what it is, and they want to know what does it do. And 1 out of every 6 plants identified on the app, they're talking 100,000 plants that have been identified, are hosta, daylily, or peony.
Yeah, it's kind of funny you mentioned that. I was poking around in the app right before we started recording, and somebody was asking to identify a plant, and it was a hosta. So,
Yep.
So with the app, how can people get it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really easy. So if you have an Android phone or an iPhone, the app is completely free to download, and just look up GrowIt, all one word, and you'll see our little green icon there, and just click download. And again, it's completely free to use from your perspective, and we just want you to connect with other folks that are interested in plants around you. And also, if you have trouble finding it on the App Store, you can go to our website at growitmobile.com, and we have links there as well.
If people have any questions, what is the best way to get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the easiest way is probably just to email me at mday@growitmobile.com and shoot me any questions you have or any ideas you think that, if you check out the app and, think it needs something, let us know. We're always trying to improve it and really add more value for the common gardener out there, and figure out, how do we make planting and gardening a better experience.
Again, I want to thank Mason for sharing this great information about the GrowIt app. I would also be remiss if I didn't mention that you can find Bob's Market on GrowIt as well. Our username, of course, is Bob's Market, all one word, lowercase. During the interview, I was a bit gobsmacked when he mentioned that someone identified 25,000 plants in 1 year. I edited out the awkward pause, as my ADHD brain was trying to do the math on that. She had to identify around 75 plants a day. I mean, that's like an hour of work a day. That's nuts. However, I know firsthand how addictive the GrowIt app can be. I can easily spend hours on there looking at photos and getting ideas for my own landscape. The projects feature makes it a great planning tool, as well as a place to network with other gardeners in your area. Something that we forgot to mention during the interview is that when a plant is identified, you fill in the information you have, like its name and its bloom color, but then GrowIt fills in the detailed information on the zones it can be grown in, and how big the plant gets, and all that other information like you might find on a seed pack or a plant tag. It's really a great information source when it comes to that aspect of the app. Over the summer, we've covered some of the basics of plant care, and in this episode, I've shared some tips on planting your garden. Now it's time to get out there and grow it. Let your imagination run wild as you plan. That's the great thing about gardening. It's about the journey. Imagining what could be, setting a goal, and then working slowly toward that goal. Is it going to be easy? Well, like most things in life, Probably not. But it's going to be fun and rewarding. Our gardening wisdom this week comes from Alice Morse Earle, an historian who lived in the late 1800s. She writes, "Half the interest of a garden is the constant exercise of the imagination. I believe that people entirely devoid of imagination can never be really good gardeners. To be content with the present and not striving about the future is fatal." Until next time, set some goals, start planning, and keep growing. If you're listening on iTunes, Google Play, or other platforms, be sure to give us a review. You can also learn more about bulbs through, GrowIt, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. If you want to contact me directly with questions, comments, or smart remarks, shoot me an email at keepgrowing@bulbsmarket.com. The music in this week's episode is by Jason Shaw. Copyright 2018, Bulbs Market and Greenhouses, Incorporated.